Okay, so this showed up in my feed yesterday.
This is all energy.
This invisible field of energy that connects and unifies everything physical and material.
We are the field. And the better we understand that field, the less we fear our own power.
If people understood this, it would change the entire dynamic of this planet.
Frequency, the secret of everything. There was breathless music, a parade of familiar voices and faces, and the promise, yet again, this secret is about to change everything. And I have to admit, my heart sank a little bit. But here's the thing you have to know about me before I say another word. Right? I'm not the skeptic here. I'm not the guy who's going to tell you it's all in your head, because I've had the out-of-body experiences. I've traveled with other beings. I've sat across from clients whose lives have reorganized in ways that, frankly, the scientific materialist story just cannot account for. And I'm about to publish a book about the soul, right? So when I tell you that this trailer made my heart sink, I'm not standing outside of this. I'm kind of family. I mean, awkwardly, I think sometimes, maybe, but family. Which is why I think I'm allowed to ask the question that nobody seems to be asking, which is, if this is so important, if this really is the secret of everything, why hasn't it changed the world yet? Look, I've watched this movie before, right? It had The Secret, What the Bleep Do We Know, countless others, and now this. The cast rotates, the graphics get better, the claims get dressed up in newer, more sophisticated scientific drag, and every time I find myself just wanting it to land, right? Really wanting it. And every time, the world it promises to transform stubbornly stays the same. And I think I know why. The answer is structural. Listen to that. We're all based in frequency. It's beautiful. It's inspiring. But what does it mean? Like, frequency of what? Measured how? And how are these frequencies related to mind exactly? I mean, what is a mind? See, these films reach for words like energy and frequency and field, which are gorgeous and they evoke a lot of feeling, but I think they're being asked to carry a weight they were never defined well enough to hold. Now, there's a name for what's missing, and philosophers call this ontology. It just means it's the unavoidable question, like, what is the universe actually made of? What is a mind? And how are these things related? Now, every framework that has ever lasted has answered that question, like, what is? But I feel like this one mostly hasn't, right? And a movement that skips that question, that doesn't define what things are fundamentally, doesn't get to be wrong. And I don't think it gets to be right either. It just makes assertions and kind of floats. And here's what's strange about this. Because I think the tradition this movement thinks it's drawing from, it actually didn't float at all. It was built on stone. See, when you think about all this vibration, I can't help but go back to Pythagoras. Right? Pythagoras was doing rigorous mathematics. He intuited harmonic ratios as a felt pattern in music, but then he derived them as mathematical relationships. The vision and the proof were the same act. Right? We had this apprehension of something and a corresponding comprehension. Now, Leibniz, 15 centuries later, he was deriving reality from a single starting principle. Step by step, every link held accountable to logic and reason. And even Shankara, I think one of the most respected Indian mystics, in his own tradition, he was writing 700 pages of dialectical reasoning to point out what cannot be negated, right? So neti neti is about like removing everything until you're left with the ground of what is and what must be. And even Plotinus, he walked his readers from the one all the way down to matter through systematic logical necessity. And so if you look at this, even going back to those Indian Vedics, they were not vague mystics. In fact, I'd argue they were rationalists who happened to be reaching towards what today we would call mystical territory. But their systems were built on stone, even the Vedas. Now, I think what happened, and this happens all the time, right, is kind of a game of telephone. it's stuff gets lost in cultural transmission across centuries, across translations, across the slow erosion of the procedure into metaphor. And see, when that happens, what survives is the destination and not the process to get there. And now our contemporary movement, we keep trying to reach the destination, but the path has been lost, right? The path has been missing for so long that almost nobody knows it was ever there. And few people, I think, even considered that it might have been a rational path. That's the real shape of this. It's like I said, I'm family, I'm an insider. And I hate to see this movement dismissed, right? Instead, I'd like to see there's a Greek tradition here waiting to be recovered and rediscovered. Now, I'm certainly going to get some pushback, right? Somebody is going to say that the work has matured. They're running EEG retreats now and brain scans before and after. You have real measurement that shows the transformation in these people. And trust me, I love that. Like I do EEG myself, including looking at altered states and meditation and all this stuff. And that's a real step. The instinct to ground these claims in something measurable is exactly right. And I would suggest that measurement without an ontology, though, is still just a better decorated version of the same anecdote. Right? Scan 1,000 people, find that their brains change at a retreat. Okay. We've shown that something very real happens. Maybe even lab values change. But we haven't really shown or explained what. We haven't explained what a mind is. We haven't really explained what has really changed. We've seen some observations. And we haven't explained why some people transform and the person sitting next to them feels nothing. See, science can tell us how the thing we've already defined as mind behaves, but it cannot tell us what a mind is. And I'm here to argue, and I will argue it, right, that comes first. The ontology must come first. So all these experiences are real. I really want to be so clear about that. The lives that we organize, the sense that the scientific materialist story is just too small to hold what we actually live. That's not an illusion, right? That's data. And I really feel like the data deserves a better theory than we're working with today. I also want to add, there's an interesting conviction at the heart of this movement that I think might be a source of some of our trouble. And more or less, I'm paraphrasing, but it's all paths lead to truth. Every perspective is valid. Anything is possible. And on one hand, I love this. It comes from a beautiful place. It's a refusal to let any single authority dictate to us what's real. But if you say it out loud, I think we're so close. The instinct is right. Knowing isn't enough. We need to know the how. But notice what how means in this trailer. Its technique, its practice, the steps to unlock your potential. I don't think that's the how that's missing, right? We have that. The how that's missing for me is down one layer. Like, how do you know any of this is true? I mean, can you show me the logic? Show me the reasoning that I can follow or refuse or argue at every step. Don't make me, like, at this point, we're asking for faith, which I feel like that's what we're trying to outgrow, right? To outgrow the need for faith and belief from ancient times. And really back to Pythagoras, Leibniz, and Shankara, that's what these guys were doing. They were starting with structure and logic, and then experience predicted from that structure. They didn't reach for it or assert it. They actually derived it. And I think that order of operations is the entire difference between a derivation and a declaration, between a floor and a thing that floats. I'm going to practice what I preach, right? I'm willing to be wrong about my own book, and I'm sure it can be improved, right? The whole reason I built it from the smallest, most universal premises I could find was to make it so that the holes are few and visible so the conversation can keep going. I'm not proposing a doctrine or asking you to believe anything necessarily. I mean, I think you can argue with any link in the chain. Now, I don't mean this as blanket humility, right? Some claims we're going to find follow from logical necessity, and those aren't really up for a vote. I mean, for example, the principle of sufficient reason. You could argue that things can happen for no reason at all. To me, there's a logical problem with that things can happen for no reason. So, if that's your argument, we might just disagree. Anyway, so some things aren't up for a vote, but how it all lands and how we interpret it and apply it, that's exactly where I expect the most hopefully healthy discussion to happen. Because here's the thing about being open. Like when we talk about being open, I think it splits in two. Most of the time in this world, keeping an open mind means being unwilling to land, right? Unwilling to settle on just one answer. I, however, mean something different. I mean open as in being willing to be revised, right? If we just settle for perpetual vagueness, the kind that can never be tested, never be improved, I think that only looks like openness, right? I think we're deceiving ourselves. We have to head towards truth, and that truth has to be able to be reasoned about. If it can't, how are we ever going to convince the rest of the world? So, the quantified soul is not a new mysticism. It's not asking to be believed. And I'm trying to offer is just a stab, right? An attempt at providing a floor, right? Something we can reason about to find our way to understand the mind, the soul, our place in the universe. And so the ask is small, just consider it, right? I think if the experiences matter to you, if you just really sense that scientific materialism is, like I said, too small to hold those experiences to explain them, and you want the next generation to inherit something more rigorous than what we did, then I think the price of this work in front of us is, in some ways, being willing to be wrong, but also to really work hard at defining everything, constraining things, using reason to work our way through to the answers. Because it actually changed the world. Like, I think if we want these secrets, and in a way they are secrets, like not everybody knows them. If we want these secrets to change the world, I really think it's going to take reason, not belief, reason. Something that anybody can follow using their logical mind to discover these truths, and they'll no longer be secrets.